Now the latest from ITV News Meridian with Sangeeta Barbara and Fred Dinage.
Good evening and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines here in the south. Ferry services and flights are cancelled because of French strikes. Disruption for families heading to France this half-term.
The referendum turns rowdy. Angry scenes in Winchester as Boris Johnson struggles to make himself heard.
An open-top ride for the Queen in Salisbury to celebrate 300 years of the Royal Artillery Regiment.
And the new mum who's got her hands full after having not one but two sets of twins. Good evening. Half-term travel plans for thousands of families across the south could be disrupted or even cancelled because of strike action in France.
Petrol stations are running dry in the country and holidaymakers here are concerned about where they'll fill up if they cross to the continent. French workers are taking industrial action over new labour laws and they're blocking oil refineries and ports.
But now a number of ferry services have been cancelled and flights are being affected too because of a strike by air traffic controllers. This just in from Sally Simmons.
Well, the strikes may be happening in France, which is in that direction, but the effect is being firmly felt on this side of the water. Ferry crossings today from Portsmouth, just behind me, to Le Havre have been cancelled, and there are also delays on crossings to Cherbourg. Now, dozens of flights have also been cancelled from Heathrow and Gatwick to Paris and other European destinations, and that's because of the 32-hour walkout by air traffic control. British Airways has apologised but said that the circumstances are beyond their control. Now, the advice to travellers because of the fuel strikes is most definitely to fill up before you go. Now, we spoke to one driver who's heading to a rally in northern France. He was remarkably confident despite the fact that his beautiful 1932 Lagonda only does 20 miles to the gallon.
We've been assured by the rally organisers that there should be sufficient. Brittany Ferries have texted me today to say that they think the situation is getting better and we've got 20 gallons on here with about 400 miles to do, so we should be about there.
But it is a worry for the thousands of people travelling to France for the bank holiday weekend, for half-term, and in fact possibly for the European Football Championships in a couple of weeks' time. We do expect problems to continue tomorrow. We will try and keep you updated with information as soon as we have it.
Sally Simmons reporting there. In other news, a ride at Poulton's Park had to be evacuated this morning after it ground to a halt mid-air. Around 20 people on the newly opened Velociraptor had to be walked down the ride using a safety harness. The roller coaster has since reopened and the park is looking into the calls.
Detectives investigating the disappearance of a former bomb disposal expert from Sussex have found human remains. The search for Mark Manning has been continuing for more than 2 years. A 50-year-old man is currently in custody. He was arrested on suspicion of perverting the course of justice and prevention of a lawful burial. A Worthing man has already been charged with murder and is due to go on trial in July.
The RMT Rail Union have accused Southern of dirty tricks following a week of mass cancellations. Southern say they're having to cancel 80 trains a day because guards are going sick, with more than 1,000 sick days being reported this month. It's over a row to make guards defunct, but the RMT claim services are deliberately being understaffed.
Police are searching for 3 men who stole £14,000 from a driver delivering cash to a bank in Bitton. The thieves grabbed the cash box from the delivery outside Santander at around 1 o'clock this morning.
7 years after her daughter died in Sussex, a mother has welcomed a new ban on what were known as legal highs. Medical student Hester Stewart died at the age of 21, having taken the party drug GBL. A new law criminalises the production, distribution, sale and supply of such substances. But police are concerned users will increasingly turn to online sources to try to get hold of them.
many, if not most, of these sources are actually from countries outside of the UK. So anyone that does consider purchasing psychoactive substances in that way does put themselves at risk of committing an offence of importation.
There were rowdy scenes in Winchester today during a visit by Boris Johnson. The former London mayor was in the city to drum up support for his Vote Leave campaign.
But as Phil Hornby reports, for a man who always has something to say on the topic, he struggled to make himself heard.
United States of Rubbish.
There's always a bit of chaos when Boris Johnson's around, but not usually this much. A city centre speech to the faithful became a shouting match and a slanging match between the two sides.
Shut your mouth!
Boris is a liar.
Why?
Why? Because we're better in Europe than we are out of Europe.
Well, that's just a matter of opinion.
It's a matter of fact.
I think it's really sad that we couldn't hear a word he had to say, because the In campaign, who obviously have complete contempt for democracy, were determined that none of us could hear what he had to
It's
say.
democracy, isn't it? Everyone's shouting, having a debate.
I think it's kind of nice to hear.
He'd come here on a good day for the Leave campaign. Immigration figures up again.
It's a bit uncomfortable for you, isn't it? Because you're a big fan of immigration. You wanted an amnesty on illegal immigrants and so on.
Look, I believe in immigration as something that can be of great economic benefit to people and to communities, but there's got to be control. It's scandalous to have a government saying that they're going to bring immigration down to the tens of thousands and then admitting that it's gone up to 330,000.
You stood for election on that manifesto that said immigration would come down into the tens of thousands. You must have known it was baloney at the time.
I said it was all very well to have immigration, but you had to have control.
His message to the South, if anyone could hear it, leaving would be good for the local economy, good for jobs. Not so, say his opponents.
In the south of England, we are almost literally looking across the channel at the rest of Europe. And we are part of Europe. We can't physically remove ourselves from it. Europe will still be there. £78 billion every year is the advantage and the benefit to the British economy from being part of the European Union. And we may decide that we could survive on our own. Of course we could. The question is, will we be poorer? And the answer is yes, we would.
Mr Johnson, politician and historian, had originally planned to visit King Alfred in the city centre.
How would he have voted?
He would have voted firmly for independence. He fought the Danes, he understood the perils that this country faces. He was a brilliant man. He also invented the lantern and a form of clock from my memory, and all I would say is the clock is ticking until June the 23rd, when we can vote for freedom and independence in this country.
Joke's on you, Johnson, you're a liar!
In the end, he headed quickly back the way he'd come, leaving the crowd still arguing.
He doesn't know what he's talking about.
We cannot negotiate our own trade agreement.
Well, I'm just collecting witness statements at the moment, to be honest.
Oh Lord, who was pushing who?
Well, I'm afraid, unfortunately, he's talking a lot of damn nonsense, sir.
What about this rabble trying to shout him down?
Excuse me? Rabble? I was shouting boo, and that's not naughty and rabble-wise, is it?
No, boo's okay.
4 weeks of campaigning to go, but clearly lots of people here have already made up their minds. Phil Hornby, ITV News, Winchester.
The hospice in Worthing's been given the highest possible rating of outstanding by the Care Quality Commission. St Barnabas House in Titnall Lane was praised for putting the people it cares for and their families at the very heart of the service.
Obviously it's fantastic news. It's a real credit to the hard work that all staff, both clinical and non-clinical, put into really making it very much a team effort. We want to offer the best level of care that we can, recognise it very much takes a team effort in order for us to be able to do that.
You're watching ITV News here in the Meridian region. Coming up.
Southampton. This really was it. The day had at last come when the Queen Mary was leaving home for good.
Remembering one of our most famous passenger ships with those who went and worked on her.
And it was a very early start for these footballers, and it's going to be a long night as well as they attempt to play the longest ever match.
In all that fog. And for more on all of our stories, head to itv.com/Meridian. Any views or news, call us on 0808 1010 095 or get in touch via Facebook or send us a tweet at ITV Meridian.
It's 6:10 and all is well. The ITV evening news continues with the national and the international news at 6:30. Let's now get a preview to London. Mary Nightingale.
Net migration to the UK goes up to 1/3 in 2015. More than half of new arrivals come from within the EU. Ministers are disappointed. Vote Leave campaigners say it proves immigration is out of control. The French fuel crisis worsens as protesters scuffle in the capital. Ferry crossings here are disrupted. And honouring a 16-year-old hero who died in battle 100 years ago. We do join Mark Austin and me for that and more at 6:30.
Now, the Queen has been the Captain General of the Royal Artillery Regiment for 65 years, and today she joined them on Salisbury Plain as they celebrated their 300th anniversary.
Yes, dressed in pale pink, Her Majesty arrived by helicopter to be greeted by the thousands who turned out for this very special visit. Known as the Gunners, the regiment provides the firepower for the British Army.
The Queen was greeted with a 21-gun salute during a day of celebrations with more. Rachel Hepworth.
In a year of significant birthdays, the Queen arrived at Lark Hill to help artillery celebrations go with what else but a bang. Her Majesty has been Captain General of the Gunners since 1952, and today she had a chance to review some of the weaponry before the King's Troop, Royal Horse Artillery, reminded us how it all started. They were followed by the machines that replaced them as the Queen paid tribute to the family of gunners.
The Royal Regiment of Artillery has since 1716 proudly served the nation all over the world.
It's outstanding. I mean, it's wonderful, especially in her 90th year, so we've been very lucky to have her. And I certainly think the enormity of the occasion was not lost on the soldiers. It was a really good day.
It was appreciated by their families too, and the veterans who came to celebrate.
I was an officer in the Royal Artillery, my granddad was in the Royal Artillery, my mum was born into the Royal Artillery, so it's running through my veins, and my jacket.
It's a big deal, 300 years, and the artillery, in my view, are the backbone of the British Army.
It's part of history, isn't it? His daddy's in the Royal Artillery, and yes, it's a lovely day and a nice opportunity to see the Queen.
The regiment, which provides reconnaissance and firepower for the British Army, has been based here since 2007, but it's long been associated with this part of Wiltshire.
For more than 100 years, Salisbury Plain has been a training ground for the British Army. Today, it provided a stunning backdrop for an awesome display of British firepower.
The regimental motto, Ubique, means everywhere, in recognition of its participation in virtually every battle. Not surprising then that the Gunners have a special place in the Queen's heart.
The equipment has changed, the environment has changed, the threats that we face as a country has changed, but actually Gunners haven't changed a bit.
Rachel Hepworth, ITV News at Lark Hill.
More headlines, and drivers who use their mobile phones while driving are being targeted by police. It's part of a nationwide campaign. 15% of all fatal collisions in the county have involved a driver being distracted or using a phone. Last year, more than 5,500 people were caught on their mobile behind the wheel.
99% of homes and businesses on the Isle of Wight now have access to a high-speed internet service. It was part of a multi-million-pound project to bring fibre broadband to everyone on the island, including rural areas.
Royal Ascot will be shown on television in America next year. NBC Sports Network will present live coverage of the event as part of a multi-year agreement. This year's meeting takes place between the 14th and 18th of June.
Celebrations will be held on both sides of the Atlantic tomorrow to mark the 80th anniversary of Southampton's most famous ever passenger ship, the Queen Mary.
Yes, for more than 30 years she carried millions of people from the Hampshire port to New York. The ship was a major employer in our region and loved by crew and passengers alike.
Transport correspondent Mike Pearce has been talking to former passengers and crew who were on her maiden voyage.
May the 27th, 1936, and almost 1 million people turned out to watch Queen Mary's maiden voyage from Southampton. Heather Beagley was 14 at the time and one of the 2,000 passengers on board.
It had taken so long for the ship to be finished because of the recession and strikes and no money, and eventually it was finished. So Southampton on the day was incredible. It was packed with people. You couldn't get another person in on the quayside. And when I arrived on the quay in Southampton and looked up at it, I was absolutely astonished. It was like looking up at a tall block of flats.
Queen Mary was the first of a new generation of large luxury ships and soon became one of the most famous ever. During the Second World War, she and her sister ship Queen Elizabeth carried more than 1 million troops from America, which Churchill said reduced the war by a year. Queen Mary was for 15 years the fastest ship to cross the Atlantic. Maureen Ryan from Brighton worked on board in the purser's office.
An enormous sense of tradition about the ship, and she was the first of those really great liners, 81,000 tons. So she was special.
Queen Mary carried the rich and famous, Bob Hope, Charlie Chaplin and Churchill, to name but a few.
Here we are again, after a very pleasant voyage.
Bernie Webb from Southampton joined the ship in 1947 as a bellboy. He was aged just 14.
When she started to run after the war again, that you had people that were fortunate enough to be on there, they had a lot to be cheerful about, all the crew, because they were in a lap of luxury, more or less, when the rest of the country weren't starving, but they weren't very well off either. So being on the Queen Mary, I mean, it's a terrific atmosphere. Everything like that. There's never really any trouble.
Southampton. This really was it. The day had at last come when the Queen Mary was leaving home for good.
In 1967, the liner was sold to become a hotel and visitor attraction in Long Beach. The jet era had arrived. The ship was making a loss.
Well, it was such an original for that sort of travel. We had other ships going backwards and forwards, but nothing like the Queen's. And the Queen Mary was the best of the two. But, come 1956, when Boeing put all these jet planes across the Atlantic, that's when we lost it, sort of thing.
And to this day, Queen Mary remains one of Southampton's best loved and finest ships. Mike Pearce, ITV News, Southampton Docks.
And see, I've been practicing something.
Go on.
From the Queen of the Seas to the Queen of the Sport, it's Sarah Gone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, Sarah, but now.
Very good. Well, they started at the crack of dawn and they won't stop until this coming bank holiday Monday. 2 teams are trying to set a new world record for the longest ever football match. It's being held in memory of 3 young players from Sussex, including 2 who died in the Shoreham air crash. Malcolm Shaw reports.
There can be many games of football which kick off at 6 o'clock in the morning, but this is no ordinary game. The teams are trying to set a new world record for the longest football match. That means playing for at least 105 hours non-stop.
We've got to make it to at least about 3 o'clock on Monday afternoon.
It's a tall order, isn't it?
It is, but I'm absolutely confident that these lads can do it. You look around and they're all excited as anything.
The game is being staged in memory of 3 Sussex players, Matt Chaplin, who died of a cardiac arrest 3 years ago, and Jacob Schilt and Matt Grimstone, who were killed in the Shoreham air crash last August. Matt's brother Paul is captain of one of the teams.
He would have loved to have taken part, given the chance. I know, he's always up for this sort of thing. So anything football related, he'd be there. We've got him looking over us on the bus over there, so he'll definitely be in our thoughts. All 3 of them will.
2 teams of 11 a side must be on the pitch at all times, with 7 subs on standby.
To set the record, the teams have got to play the equivalent of 72 normal games back to back, or to put it another way, almost 2 complete Premiership seasons.
So who better to offer the sides a few top tips than professional footballer Liam Ross Sr., defender with Brighton and Hove Albion.
I don't think I can complain about having to play as many games in a week now after this, so no, they've just got to make sure they, when they come off and do the shifts, that they've got to rest and make sure they eat and drink right. Looking at the guys, they seem like fit fellas, so I'm sure they won't have a problem.
Richard Philp knows all about the challenges the players face. 6 years ago, he helped set the world record then, a mere 41 hours.
We had lads crying on the halfway line during the middle of the night because they were just so cold. Feet, blisters, aching, pulled muscles, you name it, we had it.
As well as creating a permanent memorial, the match is raising money for the British Heart Foundation. And the final score? Anyone's guess. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News, Lancing.
Oh, exhausting, but I have a feeling they'll do it. Right, staying with football, and Southampton have today confirmed 3 players who will leave the club as their current contracts expire. They are keeper Kelvin Davis, midfielder Gaston Ramirez and young goalkeeper Will Brett. Davis, who's spent 10 years at St Mary's, may remain at the club in some capacity, with Saints in conversation with him about a new role behind the scenes. The family of the late Formula 1 driver Jules Bianchi are taking legal action following his death last year. The 25-year-old Frenchman suffered fatal head injuries whilst driving for the Banbury-based team Marussia. His car collided with a mobile crane at the Japanese Grand Prix in October 2014. In cricket, after securing their first county championship win of the season at Nottinghamshire, Hampshire's attentions now turn to the T20 Blast at Middlesex tomorrow, although they'll be without new signing Darren Sammy due to registration rules. Meanwhile, their captain James Vince will once again feature for England in the second test against Sri Lanka, which begins tomorrow at Chester Street. Now, as the rowers who hope to represent Team GB at Rio prepare to compete at the World Cup in Lucerne, Britain's most successful rower, Catherine Granger, says she hasn't given up hopes of going to Rio despite a decision to withdraw her boat from the competition. The athlete from Maidenhead won a gold medal at London 2012 at her 4th attempt, and she came out of retirement 2 years ago in a bid to defend her title at the age of 40. Penny Sylvester reports.
Catherine Granger and Vicky Thornley had been optimistic at the photocall in Caversham last month as part of the GB team heading for the European Championships. But after failing to win a medal, their double sculls partnership has now been disbanded. The women's 8, however, were successful in Germany, winning gold, and those rowers are at the World Cup in Lucerne. But from Monday, all seats in that boat for Rio are up for grabs, as Granger and Thornley are now in contention.
Throughout the year we've done a lot of testing, and you're always racing against your friends or getting tested against your friends, and to be honest that's just the sport anyway, and if it makes the fastest boat then that's what we want at the end of the day.
I'm sure that they will pick the fastest boat for the Olympics, and we just have to leave that decision with them and focus on us beating the Americans in Lucerne.
Vicky and Catherine will be assessed for the 8 after Lucerne, and at that point my job is to make sure that everyone's giving their best performance, and we don't know how that assessment's going to happen. It might be in the 8, in which case my job is the same as every day, which is to go out and make sure the boat goes as fast as possible.
British rowing's motivation for withdrawing a double boat that might finish outside the medals is to bolster the gold hopes for the 8. The battle to be on the plane to Rio is gathering momentum. Penny Sylvester, ITV News.
The competition is tough.
Say that again, Sarah.
Yeah, this is tough too, because giving birth to twins can be a double blessing or perhaps double the trouble. But imagine giving birth to 2 sets of twins within 4 years.
That's exactly what Joanna Jefferson has done. She's now mother to 3-year-olds Harley and Hayden and newborns Donnie and Dougie, both sets of twins born prematurely.
Well, the new babies are still in hospital, and as Kerry Swain reports, Joanna has already got her hands full.
Visiting their new twin brothers in hospital, 3-year-old twins Harley and Hayden. Babies Donnie and Dougie safe in their mother's arms. The first and last time we managed to get all 4 twins in the same shot.
Really not happening. Harley, where have you gone? Have you gone round to here? Come here, let me see Donnie. No. No.
Harley and Hayden were born when Joanna was 30 weeks pregnant. Donnie and Dougie even more premature at only 27 weeks, weighing just over 2 pounds each. Still receiving special care in the neonatal unit at the Queen Alexandra Hospital in Cosham. Their big brothers anxious to get their hands on them.
Gently with him. So is this your little brother? What's his name?
Donnie.
Donnie.
They like playing with the dollies at home and they're getting involved. I can see when the boys come home, they're going to want to get involved and change nappies and feed them and things. Donnie looks like Hayden and Dougie looks like Harley. So they seem to think, yeah, that's their baby and that's his baby.
If a woman's had a set of twins, then it is more likely that she will have another set of twins possibly in the future. But the reason why we don't see as much of it is because most people choose not to have any more children.
It will be a few weeks before Donnie and Dougie are strong enough to leave hospital. Waiting for them at home in Loxheath, not just Harley and Hayden, but big sisters Sienna and Sophia. At the age of 29, Joanna now has 6 children under 9. Kerry Swain, ITV News.
Beautiful family.
Yay!
We're so in tune. We can't help it. We've been apart for a few days, you see. Simon's with us now. Simon, more beautiful babies.
I'm like your offspring. So, yeah. Oh, no, I'm not the beautiful baby. These are the beautiful babies. Have a look at these pictures. Lots of babies popping out all over the place. Trevor Cridlin found this cute gosling keeping warm at Bicester Golf Club. And here's another use of the technique from Gary Smith at Hatch Pond in Poole, although that cygnet might not be called just lazy. Little baby donkey luck, that's a foal in Bewley. And if you saw that, you would just want to go and give it a stroke, wouldn't you? Well, look, 5-year-old Paige definitely did. I'm not sure what the rules are, but and not a baby, but just as cute, Hayley came across a squirrel on Brownsea Island. Look, he can do a high five.
Like us.
Whilst David Sykes in Haywards Heath found the world's strongest mouse, determined not to share any of his fat ball with the birds. But have a look at this video.
Yes.
This was a week off that couldn't have been better planned for Roy, who has spent the week in the garden watching next door where the fox cubs have been playing. Aren't they sweet, look? I know they're not to be trifled with, but they are quite sweet, aren't they? You would quite like a couple of those, wouldn't you? Although if you've got a dog, you'll know that dogs like rolling in what comes out of them. That's not nice at all.
Weather improving?
I'm not prepared to say for it.
He's not prepared to say, but he's got to say something because here's his forecast. Simon Parkin.
From blizzards to pool, driving through Europe. Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Well, here's a beautiful picture of the weather from yesterday, taken by Anthony Morris in Oxfordshire. And normally at this time of year, as we hurtle towards the end of May bank holiday weekend, there's a panic that you need your brollies and wellies. Well, actually this weekend, he's not looking too bad. Of course, there's always the risk of a shower, speaking of which we could see 1 or 2 of those this evening. But down towards the south coast, you might see perhaps a bit of lightning out to sea, or maybe 1 or 2 of the showers through the night will nudge inland. Generally, though, we're looking at a dry night and mild as well. Nowhere near as cold as the last couple of nights, with temperatures staying up into double figures. Now, tomorrow there will be more cloud than we've seen today, but there will also be some decent sunny spells. Again, there's the chance of catching an odd shower, particularly towards the west, but a lot of dry weather. Mind you, if one of those showers lands on you, again, could be heavy and with very little wind might last a while. But most of us are going to stay dry and warm in that sunshine. Temperatures 18, 19 degrees, 66 in Fahrenheit. As for your high tide times, well, you can see in Bournemouth around 25 to 1 in the morning, then 20 to 2 in the afternoon. And then Saturday, again, a few showers around, but a lot of dry weather with a dry and fine day to look forward to on Sunday.
Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather. Keeping a close eye on summer. The Pollen Count, sponsored by Ilogy Eye Drops.
Well, thankfully, the grass pollen season is only just getting going, so even in the best of the brightness tomorrow, levels shouldn't peak above moderate, and that's the plan for the weekend, although under any showers, they will drop down to low.
And in just a moment, we've got the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale and Mark Austin.
Sangeeta's got our late news, so do try and join her if you can. But for now, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thank you always for watching us. We do appreciate it. Take care. See you soon.
See you later. Bye-bye.